Oh, I'm very excited. All right, so if you live under a rock, if you have not paid attention to anything over the last number of years, with us is EriK. He is a real estate guru. He's a marketing genius. He is one of the most generous human beings that I think I know in the FM community.
I have to say,
it's going to be really fun to do. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today, including kind of where you came from, how you got here, some backstory, what you do currently. We're going to dive into foundation work, some nonprofit stuff. I hope to kind of even talk a little bit about, donating and what the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between kind of stuff, because I think we broached that a little bit when he was a panelist at the Do-Gooders Conference this summer. And then our friend EriK has written a book, and it's coming out in a couple of weeks, and we're going to talk a lot about that because I'm really intrigued about what you've put in there and what's going to be about, and I'm very color me intrigued.
Can I ask you a question? Did you bring any pumpkin pies? That's how I know you, as a pumpkin pie man.
Thank you very much. I am the Oprah of pumpkin pies is what it comes down to.
If you don't have that meme, did you make a meme of that? With your face on Oprah?
What do you know? You're mentioning a meme. I didn't know you ever cared about memes before. If
you've
ever seen Patrick speak live at a presentation, it's 94 slides of just funny memes that he likes, and it's really great.
You should see our conversations on Facebook. It's meme city.
Is it really?
The only thing back and forth.
Constantly, right?
So with the pumpkin pies, we at Hatch Realty give out a pumpkin pie to everybody we possibly can over the Thanksgiving season. I think we gave out 1,500 pumpkin pies. Costco had to buy a new oven. I made this up, but I'm going to say that it's true, is that we give away more pumpkin pies than anybody on earth. On
There's no one who's going to dispute that on the internet.
Yeah, nobody.
There's no
one person. I give more.
So give it back. So let's start what you do now.
Yeah.
So and because it's more than real estate, it's way bigger than that. And I don't think a lot of people, if they don't know you by anything other than your face on yard signs throughout the neighborhood. What else do you do? So kind of give us an update on what you're up to currently.
Boy, that's a fun question to ask, because I think you're right in that the public's perception of me is that I'm the real estate guy. And before I was ever the real estate guy, I was the ministry guy. I worked at First Lutheran Church in Fargo for 8 years, poured into kids. I did youth ministry and led worship. I was an entrepreneur in a church setting. I was building things, built a nonprofit movement, and just invested in kids. And it was so life-giving for me. And then I jumped into real estate, frankly, because I was broke. My wife and I desperately wanted to conceive and be parents, and practicing was always my favorite part. And making sure you're paying attention. Until they put you on a sex schedule, which is like the least fun thing on earth. Are we allowed to talk about that at the noon hour? Because we're doing it.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. This is why Radio Free Fargo is great, because you have outside of a couple of curse words, I think you're free to say whatever you want. It's great.
Perfect. So we were put in transitioning. We had used all of our insurance money. We had tried to conceive. We miscarried 3 times. It was so unbelievably painful, and we hid under a rock. And the only way that I could fund being a dad was if I brought in more money than what a nonprofit paid me, which, by the way, is a totally separate conversation of how nonprofit workers should be paid incrementally more than what they are right now. But I digress.
No, I agree.
We can regress later, because I think that's a great topic. Yeah.
Really
in fact, I was speaking with Than Bartson of Unseen, and I basically said to him, how do you motivate somebody in the nonprofit world? Is there a commission or something that you could do?
Right.
And he's like, the conversation's happening. And so I'm glad to see that nonprofits are starting to get some of the care and keep that they deserve.
Definitely.
Here.
So as we moved on, I jumped into real estate full time. Now my wife and I have 2 kids. My daughter's 4, my son's 3. He just turned 3 this week, and the most unbelievable life. And so I got known as the real estate guy. Okay. And you had mentioned that I'm avid in marketing, and I love social media. I love putting my face out there. But really, I'm the Colonel Sanders at this point of real estate.
Nice.
I'm not in the kitchen anymore. I put my face on everything with little beady eyes and all. I'm a little bit greasy, right?
Where's your white suit at? You literally start wearing a white suit from now on.
Here's the funny thing is we did a Kentucky Derby-themed Christmas party 2 years ago. I came dressed as Colonel Sanders, the white suit, the glasses, and all. It was really nice.
Side note, just from because we're talking about KFC and we were talking about salads earlier, KFC just started experimenting with meatless chicken wings.
I was going to say they get a
meatless chicken nuggets.
A meatless chicken wing?
So you know how Burger King Whopper is now doing the meatless Whopper?
Yeah.
They're taking so it's all plant-based.
I thought they were just doing tacos.
No. Now it's burgers that's meatless, and now it's going to be Colonel Sanders doing. It's weird.
Wow.
Sorry, that's a digression.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
man.
How do you have meatless?
I know. Don't talk about it. It's gross.
Meatless.
Anyway,
like
moving on from
tofu
the Colonel
or something,
Sanders
right?
bit.
I'm angry right now as you bring that up.
I know. I've been
I'm
raised.
flustered right now. Like, what the? Come on, you're messing with my chicken, man.
And so I got into real estate and went from being a guy who was just the guy selling real estate to building a team. And then I fell apart, crashed, burned, everything burned down around me. And my team of 13 went to a team of 3 overnight because of mistakes that I had made. Oh, wow. And boy, you talk about a learned lesson. I realized that I had moved into this for-profit world, and I was wanting everybody to serve me as the CEO, as the owner, as the person with their name and face on it. And that moment in which I got kicked out and started over and almost everybody ran from me, I realized that the way I was doing it was not natural to who I am, and it wasn't natural to who my God is. And my purpose was to serve the people that are around me and to make sure that I'm giving them the best life possible. And since then, it's become incredible. And so now I find myself, I'm a part of 18 different businesses. Nice. 10 are different investment groups. And so those are just strategic dollars that are going in so that my kids can go to college and that sort of thing. Nice. If college is even around in 15 years, but we'll find out.
Don't get me started on school.
And frankly, I want my kids to pay for themselves to go through college, though, too, to know the pain of student loans and what real money is like. And it's just this interesting dichotomy that goes on inside me. Mm-hmm. But then I have 8 active businesses that I'm running. And Hatch Realty, I spend maybe 12 to 15 hours a week with.
Okay.
And I'm there as the CEO. I'm the lead visionary. I'm coaching our leaders, and I'm casting a vision, and I'm doing some marketing things. But everything else, that is an entity and an organization that has my name and face on it, but it is not deservingly so. Again, maybe I was the Colonel Sanders that helped to create it, but I'm not the one doing the work anymore. Yep. And so the credit, the accolades go to the crew that's there. And then I've been so passionate about coaching. Okay. I had been coached as a realtor and a businessman for almost a decade. Wow. And the amount of coaching that I received and the amount of money I spent was unbelievable. And I came to a point where somebody's like, hey, you should coach. And you tell me I could do something like, hey, man, you should go eat that 80-ounce steak. I'll be like, you got it. You know, if somebody ever tells me, hey, you should go do this, I'm just going to do it because I believe in people pouring into you. I think that there's little prophets in our world all the time that say, hey, go do this. Yep. And so I went and I did it, and I started coaching, and I was the best coach and the worst coach, depending on what the people were looking for.
Gotcha.
People who were looking to try to say, I'm looking for like kind of a life coach along with a business coach and everything else. Like I want to be a better myself. I was like a 10 out of 10. But I always hesitate on saying life coach because it's another way to say I'm kind of unemployed, right?
Yep.
Because it's I've focused. It's a funnier joke than we gave credit for, by the way.
No, it's a real good one.
No, I
one.
think we get it, so that's why it's just like, yeah, we get that, man. So.
Yeah, when it hurts a little bit close to home.
Yep.
That ain't funny, man.
And then the people that were looking to sell the most number of houses and make the most amount of money, they didn't resonate with me. Because even though I know how to sell a lot of houses and have been able to do so and build a really big business, that doesn't ooze out. I don't want to talk about money. I don't want to talk about transactions. I want to talk about impact and influence and making a difference.
Did you make a direct connection from those who actually went to you and said, I want to make millions of dollars, show me how? And did you find that there was a resistance to sort of the way that it actually happens, which is give more of yourself than others, and they couldn't bridge that? Is that kind of the reason?
Great question. They weren't willing to do the foundational work. I have friends and allies across the country in the real estate world that have earned millions and millions and millions by creating an army that fights for them and works for them. That for me, like the turnover and the level of lives that those people get to live, for me, doesn't feel like that's what I would want if I was one of those people. I literally want to put myself in their shoes and move from that even apathy to sympathy to empathy. And I want to move into that arena with them and feel what they feel and understand what they feel like. Because before I was a full-time realtor, I was a part-time realtor and was on a team. Loved the team I was on. And there came a point where I went and I said, hey, I'm growing this really big business. How can I do that in your world? Like I want to have more opportunity. I want to find a way. And they met me with the word no. I don't love the word no. I love the phrase yes when. Show me a path and I'm going to build everything for you. And what happened is when I was coaching these people that ended up not resounding with me is I met them with a yes when. They didn't want to do the when. They just wanted to know the fastest way from A to Z. And it was on an unsteady foundation as far as I'm concerned, because the moment that all hell breaks loose, and in my personal life, all hell had broken loose, and I failed my people, I realized that my foundation wasn't what it needed to be. And so I started to coach on foundational issues. And if you've ever watched HGTV, there's not a show on foundations, is there? There's not a show on how can you build the best permeable concrete so it gives and moves with the clay and the soil. Like, I'm boring you just talking about it right now because people want to talk about the finishes, right? People want to talk about the beautiful light fixture and the carpet and the paint because people want that final end result and they're afraid to do the foundational work.
Well, it's the most expensive.
It is.
Yes.
It's the most time-consuming. It's
the most draining.
The most draining, literally and figuratively, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because we're sort of redoing sort of our kitchen. We're sort of expanding out the back, and one of the the lumber people just said, "Hey, here's all your materials that you're going to need. You're going to need to find somebody to build it." And I was like, "Well, where's the concrete?" He's like, "Oh yeah, we didn't put that in." Like, they don't even put that in. Like, it's, and I think because and a lot of the nonprofits I think have this issue too. And I think you hit your nail on the head where they want to see the end game of they don't want to see homelessness. They want to see anybody hungry. They don't want to see somebody with a disease, and they don't realize that all the hard work to make that thing happen is the foundation pieces of telling the story correctly, being passionate about it, getting the right people in place, spending money on people who are good executive directors, etc. So it's so funny how business, and you say this a lot, which is, and I will admittedly have stolen this from you as well, which is businesses need to start acting like nonprofits and vice versa.
Yeah, and nonprofits
need to start acting like
businesses.
In fact,
I did a TED Talk on it a couple of years ago because it felt
I may have watched that several times.
it was this incredible transition of going from working in a nonprofit and having a business that was defined by purpose to all of a sudden moving to a for-profit, and I felt like I lost purpose. Nonprofits need to run themselves with understanding profit and loss statements and empowering the right people so that they can go and build a whole lot of capital and opportunity and be unapologetic about it. If you're paying a CEO $60,000 or $100,000, if that CEO is making you an extra $500,000, you should be paying them way more than $100. Yeah. Right?
Conversation I had with the charity, we're sitting there talking about marketing. And I said, what are you guys doing for your social media? What are you guys doing to market? What you guys are doing? And, we got an intern on doing that. I said, okay, look, you guys have to start investing.
the moment somebody says I have an intern.
We got like an intern's got killed, right? They got it. So you're trying to tell me you're this big organization and you're letting this person who's learning play with you. I said, that to me, that just doesn't work in my head. And she said, well, I have a choice. I either can spend money on this person who works, so this person has a job, spend money on buying food for the people that I'm trying to help, so on and so forth, or I can spend money on marketing. I said, yeah, but if you spend the right amount of money on marketing and you spend $1 and you make $3, you just won. She says, yeah, but the fear is, do I make $3? I said, there's always going to be a fear because the fear is, do you get donations tomorrow? You know what I mean? And so stop living in that fear and move forward. I think it hit her in the head and kind of woke her up a little bit, but I think it's still a long road.
Yeah.
You have to invest. You have to make it a business. Otherwise, you are going to continue to stay stale in the way that what they're doing right now.
100% is true with what you just said. The flip side of it is now you're a for-profit business. And as a for-profit business, your purpose is for profit. But that's like saying, like, my purpose in life is breathing air. Breathing air is not what you're there for. You need it to live. But if that is your purpose of life, you have a very unfulfilled, mediocre life. And the same is about business. Is the purpose of business is to make profit. Sure, just like the purpose of life is to breathe air, you have to have it. But what would happen if your people come alive and they find unity in doing something bigger than themselves?
Exactly.
And frankly, that's what we've been doing now with the companies that I have the privilege of leading. Is we're trying to figure out what's our biggest impact on our people that will then send multipliers out into the community to go and do likewise. One of my favorite stories is this. It was 4 years ago. I was at the Global Leadership Summit simulcast. It happens in Fargo at Bethel Church. And the Global Leadership Summit, or GLS for short, is a combination of, you have Simon Sinek and Colin Powell speaking next to Brene Brown, speaking next to pastors. And it's just this, it's leadership and faith, but you don't have to have both to do, it's this really great thing. And this theme, multiply, just kept coming up over and over and over. And I couldn't figure out what it was. From the person I first talked to that was the time in which my wife and I had just welcomed in our daughter into the world. And I just kept hearing this theme of multiplying. I share this with my team when we're out to lunch on that Friday. And we come back, and all of a sudden, this young man named Kyle Reedstrom tells me, I'm feeling it too. And we're just talking about passion. And we're talking about living for something bigger. Yep. And this 26-year-old kid says to me, when I'm 30, I want to donate $100,000. Nice. And what a big life you have to donate $100,000. But I then challenged him, and I'm like, what would it look like if when you're 27, you donate 10, and when you're 28, you did 30, and when you're 29, you did 60, and when you're 30, you do 100, and that's 200, and that changes your life, and that changes so many other lives. Mm-hmm. He's 29 right now and doing his 60,000 dance.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
And he's doing that, and that was from one conversation to talk about an aligned purpose. Now, fast forward, I go back after lunch to the final session of the Global Leadership Summit, and anybody who's an event organizer knows that the after lunch session on the last day is the worst slot ever in the history of slots to fill.
People went home. Everything goes right.
100%. I mean, they're completely checked out. Yep. And he goes back, and the guy who's leading is like, we're going to do some journaling. And for me, it's like, okay, guess I'm going to check social media right now and see what emails I missed out on. Right. But I was in it, guys. Like, I was right there, totally passionate about what was being talked about. And he's given us some leading questions. Then he says a very simple question. He says, what do you want your life to be about? And then the house band plays a song by my favorite band called Need to Breathe. They play a song called Multiplied. And they play this theme song that is the birth video song of my daughter being born, which is the culmination of these other conversations I had over the last couple of days. I get goosebumps just talking about it because it was at that moment that I realized that my life was about multiplying. There was my purpose in life was to be as generous and giving as possible, but not just to do that, but to teach other people to do the same. Yep. It's why I wrote a book. It's why I'm on fire to build these other businesses. I don't need more stuff. I got abundance everywhere, more so than I ever thought possible. Yep. But the more I can get, the more I can give, and that's why I'm on fire.
So I love your story. For the last 2 years, I've walked around. Normally I have it on, but I took it off because of a reason. But normally I created this shirt, right? And the shirt said grind, hustle, impact, the definition of an entrepreneur, right? Yeah. And repeat was the last thing it said, because everything I do is about repeating. I have to impact and repeat, impact and repeat. Every time I'm looking to hire someone, I'm looking to basically replicate myself, put the power, the vision, everything I have inside of me inside of them, and have them replicate that. And so the company becomes this powerful thing. It's all about the impact, right? I haven't been about stuff for the last 5 years of my life. Like you said, I've had enough stuff. Now at the end of the day, when I wake up in the morning, I want to know who have I impacted, who have I helped, how have I made this world a better place, so my kids can grow up in a better world, right? And to me, I think that's how everyone should be living, because then you're not living for the things in life, you're living for the impact you make, right?
Well, think about how many people win the lottery and immediately regret that, or like who, and you know the people who buy the stuff and get another car and get another, like all the things, and they're just chasing something that they never absolutely satisfies. And I think you find the people who concentrate on impact first.
Yes.
And you concentrate on, whether you're a board member or whether you're a donor or whether you're a business person, and you just want to make maximum impact and make the world a better place. Those are the people who are always constantly smiling.
Yes.
And then people ask, were you always this happy? You're like, yeah, I am now. Yeah. Because they're doing something that's a lot bigger. And when the universe speaks, you sort of listen.
Yeah.
And I think every one of those who are entrepreneurs or anybody who started a nonprofit or has felt that sort of tingling, the spidey sense in the back of their head, has some similar story that rolls off their tongue, and they're sort of like they feel as if everything's sort of lining up correctly, the same way that you kind of told your multiplying story. And I think that's it resonates with a lot of people. Whether it's for-profit or nonprofit.
They're living to live. And so I say it to people every day now when they say, well, how you doing? I said, I'm living to live. And people don't get that. But if you think about it, like, I'm not living for the things anymore. Like, I'm living to be alive.
Yes,
right?
sir.
And I mean, that's how you feel happy and passionate every day, right? I jump out of bed every morning. I don't roll out. Like, I'm jacked. That's just how it is, man. So it's all good.
I love it.
Yeah, right.
So you build businesses galore. you're making maximum impact, and then you make a transition where you really concentrate on giving back, specifically a couple of charities. Some of them I've played in your golf tournaments. Some of them I have just thrown money online or whatever. Talk a little bit about your build a home, save a child.
Sell a home, save a child.
Yeah, sell a home, save a child, because it's really because I think it's a great transition, to sort of talk about sort of foundation and book and everything else, because it's an amazing story, and it's an amazing entrepreneurial. It's a venture philanthropy sort of route, and I think that's really kind of a cool bit.
I want to hear about this.
Sure. It started when I was at First Lutheran Church as an employee there, and I was paid to do good, right? Not paid well, but I was paid to do good. And it became ingrained in the fiber of who I was. And so I built a movement with the kids in the congregation called Homeless and Hungry. It was a 30-hour simulation of being homeless, and we would do it in the end of October. So think end of October in North Dakota, Minnesota. We're dealing with anywhere from 80 degrees to 20 degrees and anywhere in between, and we've had all of that in the experience.
Right. Maybe snow, maybe no snow.
And we had the dream of saying, man, what would it look like if we gave people 30 hours to walk a mile in the shoes of the least of these? So we challenged people to fast for 30 hours, to sleep outside, to do service projects, and to raise money. It had 4 main elements of it. And our first year of doing it in 2006, we set a goal to raise $10,000, and we raised $63,000. Nice. And we're like, whoa, we're up to something here. Yep. And as we're up to something, it now led to how can we share this with other congregations, with schools, with students, and that sort of thing, because this was a youth-led movement. Okay. After the course of its time in 10 years, we had 30 or 40 different churches, schools, and organizations that were involved. We had over 3,000 volunteers. We collected over 250,000 pounds of non-perishables and donations, and we raised $1 million for the community here. Wow! With a bunch of good-for-nothing kids, and I say that so sarcastically because they are just the fiber of everything. Yep. With a bunch of kids and passionate adults. Now that was ingrained in me, and then I brought myself into the real estate world. I found myself at a concert at the Fargo Dome, and if you haven't heard it before, my faith is important to me. And I was at a Casting Crowns concert, a Christian band, and a Christian rock band is like an ironic thing, right, to even say. But they had this little sermonette in there, and the lead singer's given this little sermonette, and he was talking about the movie Braveheart. And that feeling when you watch the movie Braveheart and you puff your chest out and you're like, yeah, I can go and do this. I had this Braveheart moment in his little sermonette, and my chest started to puff because I didn't want to be the guy just sitting watching somebody else in the field anymore. Yep. I wanted to be the one in the battle. And I had done some mission work to Haiti in 2010, just after the earthquake. 250,000 people died in that earthquake, and everything changed for me when I went down there. Because when you know, when you hold, when you touch, when you smell, when you feel, all of a sudden it becomes personal. And this became a personal thing for me, and I knew that I had a position and a role within it. And so I called my buddy who I knew was pouring into kids in impoverished countries around the world, and his name's Nick Shivers out of Portland, Oregon, and we started to talk about we couldn't be the only ones that had this vision. We couldn't be the only ones that thought maybe there's something here of something that's bigger that's happening, and maybe our business is supposed to mean more than just I'm going to make a ton of money. And so we started a movement called Sell a Home, Save a Child about 4 years ago, and we wanted to build it so that other realtors could come alongside, donate a portion of their closing. So, Patrick, let's say if you bought a house with us, we would tell you at the closing table, by the way, a portion of our proceeds are going to go to help save kids from around the world. And so you working with us has helped make a difference in this world. And as we've done that, now we have realtors all over the country that are a part of it. In the last 4 years, we raised about $1.3 million and counting as we're going. And we're feeding it all to help all these kids around the world. Because I wanted my business to be more than just, hey, EriK, I hope you can go and get more. Right. And I got enough. Yep. I want to live a life of multiplying. Again, to repeat myself, this is a life that I'm meant to give and to share. And the more I give, the more I seem to get. So I got to keep giving.
It's people like you that I love. I worked with Habitat for Humanity when they did this 3 houses in 10 days build over in West Fargo, and I met a guy. And so I was asking everybody, why are you here? And this guy said, because I have everything I need, I want to give back. Yeah. And it just makes sense at that point. You know what I mean? It's like, I get why you here now, man. I totally vibe with that. So I totally understand what you're saying, and I love it.
Thank you.
I love it.
See, I told you he's going to be the best guest for this show. See, I told you. It just fits perfectly, doesn't it?
It does.
All right, we're going to take one quick break. We're going to be back. We're going to talk a little bit more about sort of the generosity that not only EriK and his team have given to the community, but also sort of, likes and dislikes and sort of things that he's seen that are really kind of fun. When you get asked to participate at a lot of these things, you get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Talk about appreciation. We're going to dive into to a couple more, sort of, I think, pieces on how to make more impact and how to do better. And we're going to spend a real good portion talking about EriK's upcoming book. Because I think it's really going to be fun not only to read, but to kind of see a homegrown sort of do-gooder do exactly what needs to be done sort of from business exactly. And also, speaking of upcoming sort of fun events, this radio station is going to be co-hosting a delightful concert on October 4th. Ghost is my favorite band of all time right now. They're the greatest. We're actually going to give away tickets on this show.
Love it.
And we will give details on our Facebook page as they come forward. We'll be right back with more Do-Gooders Radio. Patrick Kirby, Brian Larry with the great EriK Hatch right after this.
Love it.
Beautiful. You guys have a great flow.
Yeah, it's
getting real.
It's getting better.
I've had my own radio show for like 7 years, and I love that you get 30 minutes of uninterrupted, like dive in and wherever you want to go. And
people
you guys
want to add time to this. They want to add hours to
add
this.
like another hour to the show, and I think it's really great. But I love that you could just do something with the thing, because I think you rush too much of the backstory, which I think, by the way, is the brilliance that they have in the book release, because you can actually invest people in that, and then you can create like your mini clips leading up to the book stuff. I'm super jealous of.
Oh, thanks.
I'm really.
We honestly don't know what we're doing. We
join the club. That's great. Right? I love it. I'm like, oh,
it's
I
go
think
packing, baby.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back, Do-Gooders Radio here on Radio Free Fargo. Patrick Kirby, Brian Larry with EriK Hatch. Yes. Welcome back. We were just chatting offline. We're talking a little bit about the Do-Gooders Conference, which we put on in July, and EriK was gracious enough to help us with a philanthropy panel. And we were talking a little bit about his charity work and what he's working on, and got to share some of his thoughts on how foundations and charities and asks work here in the Fargo-Moorhead community. And really what when you are successful and when you are out there, you get asked a lot. Yeah. And it was one of
if I'm labeled as maybe the do-gooder or the philanthropic or the generous businessman, that's like saying there's the guy who's going to give it all away, right? And it's and I want to give it all away, but I'm strategic about how I give it all away.
Exactly. And it was so fun to listen to a panel of individuals who either were beyond generous, super open and honest about kind of why they give, why they don't, what works, what's a turn on, what's a turn off. And we're talking offline about people asking you for donations. Yeah. And one of the shocking moments, I think, to the audience who was at the conference was a little bit of raw honesty from you and a couple of panelists, where they said, hey, would you give to me, how would you give, or I'm a new nonprofit, you're going to give me money, right?
I remember one of the ladies said, no, you're not proven. Somebody else will invest in you, but I'm not going to.
And there was an audible gasp, and it was one of the most awesome things I've ever experienced, because it would have taken you 9 months of trying to get meetings and meeting with every one of those individuals on stage to get that honest answer. Yeah. And it was so refreshing. How do you go about talking with and deciding on who you give to, what you embrace, and how do you say no? There's so many good places, you know.
That's a good question.
You're not a guy who likes to say no, I think, in general, because you want to be like the yes person to everything, right?
Correct.
How do you go about doing that?
So we first created a yes fund. And the yes fund is like, I can give $50 here and there. I put $5,000 in it at the beginning of the year, and I have people on my team who field a lot of these, because it unfortunately I wouldn't be able to do due diligence in listening and learning when it comes to it, and so I empower a group on my team to be the givers of our money, so they get a budget at the beginning of the year. The next level, though, is I have to be really careful about deciphering what I'm passionate about and what they're passionate about. and it's two different things. My wife is a first grade teacher. I'm a former youth pastor, and so kids are kind of our theme. I grew up with one foot in the welfare bucket as well, and so people who are poor and kids usually have our hearts. Whatever we can do, because I believe that if you can change a kid's life, you're changing the lives of generations to come. Yes. And so for me, I'm really strategic about our money with those two things. But I want to say yes to a lot of it, right? The way in which you're going to get my money, that even sounds aggressive, but the way in which you're going to...
Though. It's the truth, here's the thing, though, and I don't think... the nonprofit world has enough honest conversations and honest brokers about the exact same topic. Because you're going to give. You want to give. You're the person that has capacity to give. Yeah. To have these conversations, honestly, this is so refreshing and it's so wonderful to have, because I think people in the nonprofit world dance around like, oh, I think we're going to sort of con you into something like this. They feel like it's almost a con where you have these open and honest conversations. Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. So I'm sorry, continue. I just wanted to praise you. I wanted to give you a praise moment there, because that's really important, I think.
The older I get, the more curmudgeonly I find myself becoming. Like, just, no, this is my truth. This is my reality. It doesn't mean it's your truth, but I'm becoming more unapologetic about who I am in my own skin. Yeah. And the way I want to give is, if you shoot me a Facebook message, an email, or call my office and you tell them that we're close friends, but if you don't have my cell phone number, there's probably a chance that we're not as close as you think we are.
You missed me on that one, right?
Yeah. and it is not a jab. If you say, hey, let's go out for coffee, I don't drink coffee. No. So that shows, again, that you maybe don't know me on that level. And those are some fielding things. But what I almost always do is I'll put an extra step in there. The first step would be, I'm really busy in these next 3 weeks. I just had somebody yesterday ask for, and I knew what was coming. And they said, hey, would you be willing to sit down and meet with me? I want to share with you what I'm doing. And I said, I got 3 weeks of really busy stuff because we're ramping up for my book release on September 12th. I go, follow up with me after that. 90% of the time they don't. Yeah. Because I think everybody's looking for low-hanging fruit, and very few people want to climb the tree to get what's at the top.
Yes.
I mean, so you just hit me in the face twice right there. Well, so one, because I am that type of person, when I'm trying to have a discussion with someone about something that I'm passionate about, it's like either you're in or you're out. Yeah. And so that's like a double-edged sword there, right? So if I have a conversation with someone and I say, hey, this is what I'm doing, blah, 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 and they say, okay, yeah, get back to me in about a week. More than likely, I'm not going to reach back out to you. I've already put my thing in front of you. I'm waiting for you now to come back to me and say you want to be a part of that. So that's why what you just said, so I'm getting hit in the face like twice right now. So you try to tell me I need to reach back out to you, kind of a thing. But it's like I just have this thing where if either you're in with me or you're not. You know what I mean? So I mean, am I wrong there? I mean.
Well, you're going to get your... So if you've watched Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, his TED Talk about Start With Why, he talks about you have your early adopters. Yep. Those are the people who stand in line for the iPhone very early on. Yep. My guess is when you say you're with me or you're not, those are your early adopters. Yep. And I'm going to have to see who sometimes my other players are, because if you can come to me and say, I know you really are close with Patrick. Patrick has strategically aligned with this. Yep. I know that Patrick did the vetting that I don't need to then. Yep, gotcha. And so now I can jump on the bandwagon of a sort. Yep. And yes, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a leader, but I'm a follower more than I am a leader. Gotcha. And I'm going to follow what other people's efforts are doing, who I love and trust, because that is... Let's put this in maybe layman's terms for me. If I'm going to hire someone, I can put an ad on Craigslist and get a whole bunch of people to apply, and I know nothing about them. Or if Patrick says, you got to talk to Brian. Brian is the most unbelievable person that would fit so well in your organization.
He says that a lot, too. Just
I do. I talk you up a lot.
He says it a lot.
Well, at that point, you're now vetted. And when you're vetted, it's so much easier. Or if I throw a challenge to you and I say, I need you to go and read this book and come back before we talk. If you don't do it, that means that you're only after my resources and not my talents as well. Gotcha. Because I'm here to offer my time, my talent, and my treasures. Stop asking for just my treasures.
Gotcha. It's the long game piece. And this is where I really think that nonprofits get into that, I need something right now. And it's not about you needing anything. It's about the donor or the person's need to give. That's way more important than your need to have.
So let me ask you this question, second punch in the face. with the second time, right? So a really good friend of mine, partnering with him in my Connect Labs company, Josh Christie.
Yep.
You know Josh.
Love
right?
Josh.
Awesome freaking dude. I love Josh.
Josh and I went to prom together.
Really?
Yeah.
Together or just?
Wow.
Well,
that's
we
really
were.
interesting. I want to see the photos
You're doing
now.
out there. I mean,
I had never been in the Little Spoon in my life until I went to prom with Josh Christie.
Right.
It's like 6'6" of all beef.
right?
No, we were dating best friends. So
Okay,
yeah.
So Josh, awesome person. I've known him for a while. He helped me pretty much start Connect Labs. He knows everybody.
Yeah.
Second punch in the face is being the fact that he knows everyone. I've never wanted to use his name to say, hey, I know Josh, so now me and you are good friends. Let's have a conversation. So there's tons of people that I could have reached out in the city to connect with way faster than I've ever done before, but I never want to use someone else's name to get in the door with anybody. Am I wrong for that?
Yes.
Dang it,
Yeah. Because it's an instant validation piece. And don't hear me incorrectly. I love the hustle.
Yeah.
And this is just my perspective. My perspective is not capital T truth. It's just the lowercase t truth in my life.
Okay.
But if you come in and you're already validated by somebody I know, trust, and have vetted, you get a step ahead of everybody else in line.
Gotcha.
You like have the fast pass at Disney World, okay? You still have to wait in line for a while. You still have to go through the process, but now you're all of a sudden shot to the front.
Gotcha.
Speaking of validation, I think one of the key pieces as an entrepreneur is that I'm now officially the expert of stuff.
Yeah.
And how to do that, and the quickest way to do that is to write a book. And you, my friend, are releasing a book September 12th.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me about where in the heck did this come from?
It's really interesting. A couple of stories that parallel it. By the way, the book is titled "Play for the Person Next to You." It's a guide to servant leadership, and so it's a picture of me on the cover with eye makeup on. It looks like I just got out of a football game. I look
It's
like
the most badass you've ever looked.
Thank
and
you.
I want you to.
I look like Carson Wentz once he lets himself go, right? Like just ginger and disheveled.
2040 Carson Wentz,
right.
right?
If that isn't on Twitter immediately, I don't know. Someone's missing the boat.
2 photos, Carson Wentz now, Carson Wentz later, right?
At my book release, where on September 12th at the Fargo Theater, I'm going to be telling stories from the book, but I'm going to put the photo up there, and I'm going to put my 8th grade football photo up there as well, which is so bad that I can't see over my gut, and I didn't lace my pants up all the way in the football photo. So again, really, all testosterone all the time.
I love it.
It's a weird thing to put a book out there to say I am an expert in this.
Yes.
I'm full of self-deprecation almost all the time, and I understand that I may not be an expert, but I'm a passionate student. And the things that I've experienced, because I'm a ready, fire, aim kind of guy, I've had more blows and more wins than most have had in this condensed business time frame. And I simply know that from the coaching standpoint and the people that have put their trust in me, I get to coach some of the top realtors and business people around the country. Yes. And they're putting their trust in me, and they're saying, you have something special and you have something different. Okay. I think that we all have a little something special, but for me, I felt compelled to write it because it was different. There was a merging for me when I went to the for-profit world, coming from the nonprofit world, of a loss of identity. And I felt parched for purpose, and I could only find it when I started to be a giver and a caretaker and a servant leader. Yep. And I know so many people in Fargo and around the country that are starving for purpose, and they maybe are caught in the middle, maybe they're at the top of the totem pole or on the bottom, but they're miserable where they're at because their life is about making money. It's like it's about chasing oxygen, and it's not giving them the life that they desperately want.
Not living to live.
And absolutely, man.
Yeah.
And so I said I'm going to write a book, and then I looked into what it took to writing a book, and I'm like, how much time am I going to have to put into this? And I'm going to have to sit down and hold up now.
Break out the pencil or the old school typewriter.
And we were, Hatch Realty had been on the Inc. 5000, top 5,000 companies, small business companies in the United States for 3 years in a row. And I got this thing every year from a book for a company called Advantage Media. Okay. And they were a publishing company, essentially, and they're a subsidiary of Forbes. Okay. And they're like, hey, work with us. You can write your book. You can hire a ghostwriter to do it. So they're just going to interview you. And like, there's still a lot of work to do with it. But I'm like, hold up now. I can I can narrow down what could be a 1,000-hour process, and I could put it into 150 hours and go forward and write a book. So I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of it because I'm not trying to be like everybody else. And I'm proud of it because I know that there's somebody out there who's searching for purpose right now, and they're searching by taking, and they're going to find purpose by giving.
You, I'm assuming, based on kind of your speaking style, your teaching style, your coaching style, that there are a lot of personal anecdotes and personal stories.
Yes, sir.
If I can make a reach and assume a great deal, you talk a lot about your mom on social media and in person in your thoughts. Does she play a prominent role in this sort of book or this process that you wrote? Because I feel like there is, every time you talk about her, there's a realness, I think, to your storyline, and it gets less audacious and sort of and it gets really down to, am I doing right by her? Kind of moment, and it always seems to come back there, or at least that's how I relate it on social media when I kind of read stuff that you post or when you're talking.
Yeah, I appreciate that insight. When I was 16 years old, I grew up in a single-parent home. My dad was never around, abandoned us when I was two, excuse me. And my mom worked 3 jobs just to keep us out of welfare. And when I was 16 years old, I went on a mission trip with my church down to Mexico, came back, and I was on fire to do good in my life. And on the drive home from the airport, my mom said, I had a doctor appointment, right? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, I have cancer, and I have stage 4 cancer. And I was 16 years old. I didn't even know what that meant. And she beat it. And her prayer was that she would see me graduate from high school. My sister's 4 years older, and so I was like, she wanted to get me to an adulthood, and then she was okay dying, right? Well, she beat cancer. 3 years later, it came back, and then 2 months after that, came back in June of 2001. She died, and so I was orphaned at 21. And so to your question is like that is the foundation of who I am and what I've gone through. And in fact, it is probably the reason why I wrote the book. Is my mom worked at Merit Care, now Sanford, for 20 years, and she was everybody's favorite. She was their favorite because of how she made them feel. She was their favorite because of the curiosity that she had in their life. This is even awkward for me to have you ask me all these questions because I want to ask you guys a ton of questions, right?
And I want to tell you kind of things. So, because I'm vibing with everything you're saying. We just had a conversation before you walked in about Patrick. He's telling us about his dad, who sent him that, about his kids, sent him the whole song thing. And I was telling him, I don't have my mom or dad either. And so I thought how cool it was for him to have his dad be able to text him and say that to him. Now he gets to pass it on to his kid. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it right now. So I'm totally vibing with what you're saying right now.
Yeah. I long for hearing, I'm so proud of you, because never heard it from my dad and heard it from my mom a lot. And she was everybody's favorite with how she treated them. And she was not the CEO. She was not the entrepreneur. She was not the leader by title, but she was the leader by character and by heart and by giving. So much so that there was 1,000 people at her funeral for a secretary at Medicare, because she was everything to everyone by being a selfless servant. And so this is a tribute to her. This is a tribute to the faith that she put in me and the lifestyle that I'm choosing to live now. I'm just trying to make her proud of me every day.
I think she's proud of you, man. I literally think
we're just getting started though, man. Like it's
I can tell you just
we got really big things.
If there's and I know you talk a lot about the book, and I want to save it, for September 12th at the Fargo Theater. If you haven't gotten tickets, where do we get them?
Hatchingleaders.com.
Hatchingleaders.com, and we'll drop that as a link in our Facebook groups and our page. And everywhere else, so you guys get $25.
Yep, $25. You get the book too. Yep,
perfect. Is there, without giving away kind of what you're going to present on, is there a line in the book, if you had to sum it up, or there's one line that you're super proud of? Because there's a couple, like, when you write and you have one of these moments where you kind of giggle to yourself, or you have one of those moments where you're like, holy crap, that was awesome. Like, is there a holy crap, that was an awesome line that you remember when you wrote it, or that could sum up kind of the book itself?
Yeah, it happened before I actually wrote the book. I was meeting with Mark Anderson, who has done so many great things in this community. His most recent accolade would be Black Ridge Bank, but he's gone and sold that now too. So who knows what Mark is doing next? But we were talking about how some people in our lives show up to be but a couple of sentences, and some don't show up at all. And it really about purpose. And people have asked me from time and time again, like, are you going to write a book about yourself? And it always has felt egocentric to say things like, I've climbed Kilimanjaro, or I know how to spell Kilimanjaro. Like, it feels interesting to have an autobiography. Yeah. And Mark said to me, he said, EriK, wouldn't it be better to be a chapter in everybody else's book? Mm-hmm. And it was that moment where I'm like, that's it. That's the summation of what I want, is to be a chapter in everybody else's book. Mm-hmm. Because my own autobiography only lives within me. But if I can be something in your life, in your life, in your life, mm-hmm. now all of a sudden we've multiplied, which again plays right into my jam.
That's a really good. Segment right there. Yeah,
right. Impact, man. I love it.
What was the hardest part about the book writing process? Editing.
Yeah, editing.
Humbling, isn't it?
Oh, well, I would even say this is I'm more of a speaker than I am a writer. I rely on voice inflection and tonality and energy and speed to create the real ambiance rather than big fancy words. The Lord didn't give me any of them. They're big fancy words. And so when I did my first couple of chapters and I got it back from the editor, it was like reading the most god-awful, poorly put together, and I'm like, what? This ghostwriter's crap. I'm like, wait, no, I'm crap. And so I went back and I rewrote the chapters later on once I actually found my rhythm. But that was the difficult part, is taking being a natural storyteller and then trying to teach at the same time. And I just needed to be the storyteller and let the lessons come from the stories rather than me trying to be this educator and just piecemeal things together. Yeah.
I got my first review back out of the first couple of chapters, and the guy that I sent it to said, "Well, you sound like an a-hole."
I mean, when
and
you
I
told
was
me
like,
that.
"What?" And he goes, "What are you trying to do?" And I had to rewrite it by just talking into a microphone as if I was giving a speech, because you and I are very sort of the same. Where I got to talk with my hands, and if I don't talk with my hands, I don't know what I'm doing with them.
Right.
And so it's really it's remarkable to kind of have that sort of understanding.
So I'm not the only one.
You're not the only one. In fact, I think that might be a thing that nobody talks about because they don't get to do it. Next big things on the horizon. Mm-hmm. What foundation work? What audacious goals do you have outside of this book release on September 12th at the Fargo Theater? You can go to
hatchingleaders.com.
Hatchingleaders.com. Get your $25 ticket and get a book. What other big, audacious, and fun things you have planned, either for the good of the community, the good of your team, the good of yourself, just sort of like just taking it all in? What are you doing next?
So scalability has been our biggest challenge when it comes to our coaching ventures. Hatch Realty has figured out, I think, how to do real estate well in Fargo. We've now expanded to Bismarck, Grand Forks, Detroit Lakes. We have a couple other ancillary places like that. Nice. But my real expansion comes from Hatch Coaching and to try to create a massive movement of goodness and servant leadership throughout the country. In fact, we say that the vision and purpose of our company is to redefine how people treat people. And so we are using that as our vehicle to take these passions that we have and to go to a really big scale. This is always interesting because I've read something that said you have to be careful who you share your dreams with, because there are doubters and there are people here who may be listening and they're like, yeah, that guy's doing it, I can do it too. And there are other people that know all the dumb mistakes and crap that I've done in my last 39 and a half years on this earth, and they're thinking, that guy's just so full of it. And it's really hard to be validated in your own land. I can go down to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'll be treated like a celebrity. I don't deserve it, but they'll treat me like it's like author, TEDx guy, like all these things. Like I'll go in and they'll be like, this guy's amazing. And here I'm like Jenny from the block. I'm like EriK, who has messed up all these times and got kicked out and fired. And he's the guy who made all these mistakes, and he's the really loud, obnoxious guy, right? And so I hesitate on sharing it, but you asked, and so I'm going to. When we talk about our big dreams, is I am not Gary Vee. I'm not Tony Robbins. I'm not anybody but myself. I'm not a John Maxwell, but I am called to share leadership and servant leadership on a national and global scale.
I love it.
how it's going to get there. I'm not concerned about the how right now, because when you have a big enough why, the how will come and show itself.
Figure out a way.
Yeah.
You will figure out a way.
And so we are just getting started, as I say. And the ancillary things that come from that are, I think, people having more enriched businesses and lives, more abundance to give, that will create a multiplying effort. And all of a sudden, everything is a little bit more cool.
I love it. I've spent this entire year. I started this year. And so I spent the last 3 years building my company here in town, right? It was more of, hey, do you want to do business together? Hey, do you want to do business? Hey, do you want to do business together, right? What I quickly realized is, hey, you have an awesome thing, but I don't know you, right? And so I started this year adding nothing but value to people that I meet. The more value I started to add to people, the more my company started to grow. Because I wasn't asking for anything. Now it's like, what can I do for you? And then now people say, oh, I like this guy. I know this guy. And so I've started to grow now based on the fact that I've added more value to anybody than it is about business. It's not about the money anymore. It's about what can I do for you? And then the money comes, right? So, I mean, I'm on the page you're on. Can't wait to read your book, you know, the entire 9 years. Great host. I mean, great show today, man.
It was a great show today.
Great show today.
So this is great, and I knew it was going to be an amazing show, and I'm so glad we have a platform like this for individuals like EriK.
Yes.
Congratulations on the upcoming book.
Thank you, man.
We will be there. Do-Gooders Radio shall be in the Fargo Theater September 12th, where you can buy your tickets at
hatchingleaders.com.
Woo! $25 to get you the book. Thank you so much for being on the show.
This is a real joy. You're doing something special here.
It's going to be, I think it's going to, this is the exact platform with this kind of topic and this kind of thing. It's going to be great. So
it's speaking about something that people don't normally talk about in the open. And we're doing it for free.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We're doing it for a long period of time, too.
Right.
So, so thank you again. Brian, great show today.
Great show today, Patrick.
It was a really good show today. And again, if you guys want to check out the other great programming on Radio Free Fargo, go to radiofreefargo.org. Go check out all the great folks who put on some really interesting stuff. Remember, this is a nonprofit organization itself. And so if you feel it inclined to support local music, support local artists, support a great radio station here, go on and donate as much as possible. And tell them Brian and Pat sent you. Again, stop by every Tuesday at noon, Do-Gooders Radio. Brian, what do we always say?
When we all do better,
we do better. We'll see you next week. Thanks, EriK, for stopping on by.
Have a good one, everyone.
Yeah!
Beautiful.
That's a fast hour, isn't it?
It flies by.
It's a really fast hour.
It's really good. That was